You know that person who actually gets a little skip in their step when the first frost hits the grass? While everyone else is mourning the end of beach days and frantically Googling flights to Florida, they're quietly pulling their favorite oversized sweater from the back of the closet with a look of genuine relief. They're the ones who see a forecast of grey skies and rain and think, finally, perfect weather. To the rest of the world, they might seem a bit gloomy, or maybe like they're missing a fun gene. But what if I told you their brain isn't broken? It's actually playing a much more sophisticated game of emotional survival than the people chasing the sun. You've seen them, haven't you? The ones who don't just tolerate the cold, but seem to inhale it like it's a tonic. They aren't just resisting the summer, they are recovering from it. Think about the specific, heavy feeling of a late August afternoon in the suburbs. The air is so thick with humidity, you can practically chew it. The sun has been beating down on the pavement for 12 hours straight, and the heat is still radiating off the bricks long after the sun has set. Everyone around you is talking about the perfect beach day, but for this person, that sounds like a special kind of hell. They're thinking about the sand that gets into every crevice of the car, the sticky feeling of sunscreen mixed with sweat, and the constant, buzzing sound of insects and lawnmowers that never seems to stop. For them, summer isn't a vacation, it's a 3-month-long sensory onslaught. They are the ones who feel a quiet sense of dread when they see a forecast of 90-degree weather. It's not just about the discomfort, it's about the energy drain. In a culture that worships the sun, their preference for the dead of winter is more than just a quirk. It's a biological and psychological boundary. They are the guardians of the slow life, the people who understand that you cannot bloom all year round. When the temperature finally drops and the first real cold front sweeps through, you can almost hear their nervous systems sighing in relief. The world is finally quieting down. The colors are fading to a manageable palette of grays and blues, and the pressure to be out there is finally melting away with the autumn leaves. Let's talk about the surface of this behavior, the high-definition details of a winter lover's life that most people overlook. Notice the way they interact with their environment when the cold hits. They are the masters of the nesting instinct. While summer people are busy trying to find the next rooftop bar or the most crowded hiking trail, the winter lover is curating a sanctuary. They have a specific ritual for the evening. The way they dim the lights to a soft amber glow, the way they select a blanket based on its specific weight and texture, and the way they find a meditative joy in the sound of a heater humming in a quiet room. To them, a perfect Saturday isn't a party, it's a snowstorm that cancels all their plans. Have you ever noticed the genuine, unadulterated joy on someone's face when they get a work from home or school closed notification because of the weather? That's the winter lover's version of winning the lottery. It's not just about the day off, it's about the social alibi. In American culture, staying inside on a sunny July day feels like a moral failure. You feel the judgment of the sun itself, as if every ray of light is asking, why aren't you out there being productive or social? But in the winter, the weather becomes a protective shield. It gives them the moral permission to disappear. They don't have to make excuses for why they aren't at the barbecue or the beach. The biting wind and the grey slush are their best friends because they keep the world at bay. This is the refuge effect in its purest form. Their brain is wired to find pleasure in the transition from a perceived threat to absolute safety. Every time they look out their window at the wind whipping through bare trees and then feel the soft fabric of their socks, their brain releases a potent dose of dopamine. It's an ancestral win, the same feeling our ancestors had when they finally retreated into a dry, warm cave after a long day of survival in the wild. The winter lover isn't antisocial. They are just pro-peace. They value the quality of their internal environment over the quantity of their external experiences. They are the ones who find beauty in the melancholy aesthetic, the blue hour at 4 in the afternoon, the stark silhouette of a tree against a slate sky, the way a cup of coffee steams in a way that feels like poetry. They don't need the world to be loud and bright to feel alive. In fact, the louder the world gets, the more they retreat into the beautiful, quiet fortress of the cold. Now we reach the hidden engine, the aha psychology that explains why their brain is literally wired differently. At the core of this preference is something called optimal arousal theory. Every human being has a different threshold for stimulation. Some people are like empty cups that need constant input, loud music, bright lights, social interaction just to feel normal. These are the classic summer lovers. But the winter lover is often what we call internally overstimulated. Their brain is already running a million miles an hour. They are deep thinkers, observers, and often highly sensitive individuals. For them, the high visual volume of summer, the neon greens, the harsh shadows, the constant movement of crowds, is like trying to listen to a whisper in the middle of a rock concert. It's exhausting. When winter arrives, it's like someone finally turned down the volume on the entire planet. The acoustic silence of snow is a real physical phenomenon. Fresh snow absorbs sound waves, making the world literally quieter. For a sensitive nervous system, this isn't just nice, it's therapeutic. It reallocates the energy their brain usually spends on filtering out noise and puts it back into deep processing. This is why you'll often find that your most creative, introspective friends seem to wake up in October. Their cognitive performance actually peaks in cooler environments, specifically between 62 and 68 degrees. When the body isn't fighting to dump heat, the brain can build cathedrals of thought. But there's a deeper, more social layer to this engine, the social tax. In the US, summer is the season of forced fun. There's a relentless pressure to be doing something. Every weekend is a marathon of social obligations. The winter lover feels this as a heavy burden, a 3-month-long extrovert Olympics they never signed up for. Winter, however, provides the social free pass. It is the only season where "I'm staying in" is met with a nod of understanding instead of a question of why. This reveals a fascinating truth about their personality. They value authentic connection over social performance. They would rather have a 3-hour, soul-searching conversation with one person over a bowl of soup than spend 10 minutes screaming over music at a summer party. They are the masters of the huddle effect. They know that the cold brings people closer, physically and emotionally. The summer you is a version of yourself that is spread thin across 100 different events. The winter you is concentrated, focused, and deep. Does this feel a bit too familiar? Do you find yourself breathing easier when the sun starts setting earlier, feeling like you finally have permission to just exist?
The single biggest reason the stock market has been able to ignore the rising costs of living and the trade wars is the three letters that have become a trillion-dollar religion: AI, artificial intelligence. If you look at the S&P 500 index over the last 2 years, almost all of its gains have been driven by just a handful of tech giants. Without Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, and Alphabet, the stock market would be flat or even in a bear market. These companies have added trillions of dollars in market cap based on the promise that AI will create a productivity miracle that solves all of our problems. But when you look at the actual money moving through the system, it looks less like an industrial revolution and more like a circular economy. According to a report by Gartner, global IT spending is set to reach $5.6 trillion in 2025, with over $200 billion specifically for AI servers. Here's how the game works. Nvidia sells expensive chips to big tech companies like Microsoft and Meta. Those companies use their massive cash reserves or borrow cheap money to buy those chips. They then build massive data centers that cost billions of dollars to construct. These construction projects and chip sales count as massive investments in the GDP calculation. This makes the economy look like it is booming. However, according to an analysis by Goldman Sachs, the revenue being generated from AI software is currently only about 10 cents for every dollar spent on AI hardware. Companies are spending billions to build the tools, but they have not yet figured out how to make a profit from them. This is the definition of a bubble. We are building the infrastructure for a future that might not actually have a paying customer. This is the ultimate landlord special. The tech industry is painting over the stagnation of the real economy by throwing $1 trillion into a hole and calling it an investment. As long as the stock prices keep going up, the CEOs can justify the spending. But the moment the market realizes that these multi-billion-dollar data centers are not generating enough revenue to pay for their electricity bills, the bubble will pop and the coat of paint will peel away to reveal the rot underneath. And for the average worker, this productivity miracle is actually a threat. The entire justification for this trillion-dollar gamble is that AI will replace human labor. According to data from Challenger Gray and Christmas, more than 150,000 job losses in the last year have been directly linked to companies shifting their budgets toward AI infrastructure. We are trading high-quality white-collar jobs for gig work in the delivery and transport sectors. The government still calls you employed if you are driving for Uber, but you no longer have the purchasing power that supports a healthy economy. If the economy is failing the average person, then why are the numbers so high? The answer was hidden in a leaked internal report from Citigroup back in 2005. The report described a concept called a plutonomy. A plutonomy is an economy where economic growth is powered by and largely consumed by the wealthy few. In a traditional economy, the health of the system depends on the middle class. If regular people have money, they buy cars and houses, which drives manufacturing and creates more jobs. This is the virtuous cycle of the 20th century. But in a plutonomy, the middle class no longer matters. According to the Federal Reserve, the top 10% of households now own 93% of the entire stock market. They also account for over 60% of all consumer spending. This means that as long as the top 10% feel wealthy because their stock portfolios are at record highs, they will continue to spend. They will buy luxury apartments, fine art, and high-end services. This spending is more than enough to keep the GDP numbers growing, even if the bottom 50% of the population is living paycheck to paycheck and drowning in credit card debt. This creates what economists call a K-shaped recovery. The top leg of the K represents the wealthy whose assets are inflating, while the bottom leg represents everyone else whose real wages are being eaten by invisible inflation. The analysts at Citigroup told their clients that they could ignore the struggles of the poor because their spending was no longer a significant driver of corporate profits. They argued that companies should focus exclusively on catering to the rich. This is exactly what we see today. The luxury market is breaking records while discount retailers are struggling to stay afloat. The danger of a plutonomy is that it is inherently unstable because it relies on the continued inflation of asset bubbles. If the AI bubble pops or if the banking system faces a real liquidity crisis, the wealthy will stop spending and the entire house of cards will come down because there is no middle class left to catch the fall. We have systematically destroyed the foundation of our economy to build a penthouse for the elite, and now we are surprised that the building feels shaky.